Hey everyone, in this book review, I'll use the words despair, depression, despondent, and even death. And given the morbid tone of all these words, I'll suggest you to watch this video at your own discretion because I'll talk about this book. Maybe you should talk to someone by Laurie Gottlieb. This is a book that I read twice in the past 10 days, and each time I was so choked up with emotions as my eyes welled up with tears. It's about a therapist, a woman in her 40s who's struggling to write a meaningful book, grappling with multiple health issues, just had a fallout with her partner, and is a single mom. It's a high point in her life where she realizes that in spite being a therapist, she needs an external help. So she decides to consult a more experienced therapist in her city, Wendell, and with whom she discusses her issues. The narration revolves around four of her other patients, and she primarily focuses on their life. That's Julie, John, Rita, and Charlotte. So Julie is a woman who is in her 30s, and she got diagnosed with cancer in her early 30s. Julie was a marathon runner. She was a gym enthusiast. She had a very proactive lifestyle. So to get diagnosed with her cancer obviously turned her life upside down, and she did not want to go to a therapy where they would make her feel like a patient by heaping on her with unwanted motivational lecture. There is this chapter in this book, which is the funeral ceremony of Julie, where all her loved ones gather, and she had written a book for her loving husband Matt. The title of the book was The Shortest, Longest Romance, and which included a lot of romantic and humorous anecdotes of their loving relationship. There is one chapter where she had created a template of the dating profile for her husband because that would be his life after her death, because she really wanted him to be happy and miss her at the same time. The obituary of Julie said, Julie, who was loved because at the end love wins. There is this woman, Rita, who is 69 years old, and she is contemplating suicide before her 70th birthday. She carries the albatross around her neck of her toxic and abusive marriage. Her first husband, Richard, was a very abusive, drunkard alcoholic, and Rita carried the guilt that she could not protect her children from her abusive husband. And she got disconnected from her children as well as her husband. And she brings a very realistic perspective that people are so beautifully complicated and complex, because at one moment Richard was a very doting and loving father, and in the next moment he was this uncontrolled freak who would lash out at everyone around him. The third patient is John. I felt that John is my brother because he has a very similar avoidant personality to mine. Like, if I feel that any surroundings or any situation or any person triggers a very negative emotion or aggression in me, I immediately go cold turkey on those things or those surroundings. John had a very traumatic experience. He, along with his wife Margot and his two daughters and his son Gabe, they all were going to Legoland for a trip. Now, John is a workaholic, always on his phone, which really infuriates his wife Margot. Now, there is a tussle between them while they are driving whether he should pick up a phone call or not. And ultimately, John decides to do so. Within those fraction of seconds, his car was hit by an SUV and his son Gabe dies. The call was a wrong number. And this nightmare, this ghost of the past, follows John everywhere. He becomes very distant and from his family members, and that is why he decides to consult this therapist. John becomes a very irritable person who thinks that the world is full of idiots, where he loses patience with everyone and everything around him. But ultimately, he learns to exercise the demons of the past. The next patient is Charlotte, who's a college going child, and she had parents who were largely absent from her life. They were struggling with their own issues. So Charlotte develops this fear of abandonment, and she decides to unconsciously attach herself with very toxic people because she thinks that she will dump them before they decide to dump her. In this way, she will have some control over her life. By nature, she is a very addictive person, and she, in spite of being such a talented and beautiful girl, Laurie Gottlieb is unable to understand that why Charlotte is unable to overcome her nature. I learned the word homostatus in this book, which is a clinical psychology term. It means that sometimes the loved ones of the patient of a mental health disease, they wouldn't want the patient to overcome the situation because the system at home has become so fixed that they are also habituated to it. So sometimes your loved ones may not want you to become more productive or make any progress in your life unconsciously without any evil intention, because they are more familiar with the situation where you are the victim. And sometimes you are not the best person to talk to you about your own self. If I have to give the gist of this book, I'll use Sahir Ludhianvi's lines, which is who's one of my favorite poets, कि कभी खुद पर कभी हालात पर रोना आया, बात निकली तो हर एक बात पर रोना आया, और कौन रोता है किसी और की बात पर, क्योंकि सबको अपनी किसी बात पर रोना आया, which tells you the beautiful healing power of conversation with the people who are really right one to strike that conversation with, because it will break the marathon of silence and will bring that torrent of tears and emotions which are much more required. And I want to end this book review with a question. Do you think in a country like India, where there are multiple languages, therapy would still be considered as an elitist concept because most of the well qualified doctors converse in English? Now, when it comes to a person like me who is an educator of English, I also use this language to converse in a very formal, academic, professional setup. If I have to express my emotions, I'll never be comfortable in this language. Similarly, when it comes to my parents and my grandparents, they are more comfortable in talking in Angika, because a lot gets lost in translation. We lose a lot of emotions when we switch language. So do you think therapy as a concept will be relevant to the large section of our society? The reading experience of this book is quite equivalent to watching the movies like Goodwill Hunting, Tamasha, and Dear Zindagi. I love those movies. And also this Before series, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Before Midnight. I hope you have a lovely experience of reading this book, because this is a book that I know that I'll come back to multiple times. And if you read this book, do tell me your reading experience.